Hello, welcome back to yet another live episode of Green and White, brought to you by Argyle Life. Before we get into it, as always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I want to live like Bim Pepple is the chant that should have been ringing out at the Western Home Stadium as Argyle beat the extravagantly named Posh yesterday, 1-2-0. Sam, let's just introduce you. Let's just go straight for it. I didn't write a proper intro. No puns today. Sam, you were among the 1,234, which is a very pleasing number to be at the Western Home Stadium yesterday. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Nice. Adam Price, were you there?
No. Sorry to disappoint. I've actually never been to Peterborough, which is a blot on my record, I suppose.
Why is that?
How long have you got?
Just can't be asked.
Something like that.
Fair enough. And James Stables of one team in Devon fame, or shall we say BBC Devon fame now, on co-coms yesterday.
Yeah, I'm finally having a face for radio work for me.
Well, haven't we all? This is the panel for exactly that. And you might be the best. Well, I think you are the best looking one here. So that's a damning indictment for us all, isn't it? Sam, why don't you give us your customary post-match run through where you tick off every single question going?
Yeah, I've never heard such damning with faint praise there as when Tom Cleverley said that Bim Pepple was a good development player but wasn't really ready yet at the start of the season. But as yesterday he scored the winning goal and rapidly proving himself to be ready. That pun didn't quite segue as naturally as I intended. Got a bit tongue-tied, but anyway, never mind. We'll move on. Very good performance. Really, really impressive. Best performance of the Tom Cleverley era. I'm going to say probably even best performance of the post-Stephen Schumacher era. It just looked like, the old fearless Argyle again. A team going out, getting at teams, attacking, throwing men forward, dominant performance, creating chances, getting the crowd excited, thrilling, didn't want to turn your head away from the pitch. Just an absolute pleasure of a game to watch. Really, really deserved victory. We came out much the better team from the offset. Anybody who watched my appearance on the Peterborough podcast of Up the Poshcast, one of the only two to beat us in the FCAs, will have seen that I very much confidently predicted to them that we would come out defensively, stick men behind the ball and try and grind out a result, which is how we've approached many of the away games recently. But Argyle made me look like a total idiot by coming out and attacking Peterborough from minute one, as I mentioned. Lots of chances were had. I think Peterborough only really had one good, even remotely good chance all game, which was in the second half, which was blocked by Galloway at the near post. But I think Connor Hazard had it covered anyway. To be honest, he positioned himself very well in the goal. Apart from that, it was all Argyle chances. We could have gone ahead before we did. We came out of the blocks flying. Great press from Joe Edwards to win the ball just into Peterborough's own half. Put it forward to Curtis. Lovely, lovely cross and just over by Tolai. Then another really dangerous corner from Curtis, bobbled around the 6-yard box and back in from Edwards. Didn't quite fall to anybody, but it was you could tell it was going into the right area. The Curtis, we'll talk about it more later, not really too much detail, but very clearly the high chance creation numbers for Curtis are not a fluke at all. And again, Curtis was involved somewhat indirectly in the goal, in that he won a header. I think Peterborough tried to clear the ball out of defence. Curtis won again on our pressing, by the way, was absolutely exemplary all game. Curtis pressing again, sort of just inside Peterborough's half, won a header, got it forward to Tolai was battling with the Peterborough player O'Connor. O'Connor just takes a bit too long to clear the ball. Tolai wins the battle, gets in, cuts the crossing brilliantly, and Pepple. Honestly, I think despite the fact he scored the goal, I think there's probably some improvements to be made in the finish. I think he should have just hit it first time on his left. The fact he tries to take it onto his right, I think if anything gives the defender too much time to get back, and I think the defender's almost in a position to put a block in or put a tackle in. But thankfully, it is still a composed finish by Pepple. I just think that was begging to be hit first time, but I can't criticise him too much. He scored a goal, and once again for the second game in a row, Another winning goal from Ari Pusita, Muno Iparim, Emmanuel Peppel, and his stock fast rising with Argyle fans. We continued our dominance after going 1-0 up. Often you see with Argyle, I was talking earlier about how we sometimes a defensive all game, but even if we're not necessarily a defensive all game, we sometimes just go 1-0 up and then throw men, and then sort of throw defensive players on and sit back. But we didn't even really do that at all yesterday. Even after going ahead, we still had very much some chances. Again, going back to that man again, Ronan Curtis, he's everywhere in my notes here. It was another fantastic cross into Peppel. On the ground for Peppel, absolutely should score, puts it over. Curtis' set pieces were dangerous all game. And the other big chance was a player who was not famed for his passing in my eyes. Malaki Boateng puts a lovely pass out to Joe Edwards, so credit where it's due. And again, Joe Edwards is a name that's coming up a lot in my notes. He had, I think, his best game of the season yesterday, I would say without a doubt.
You make notes?
When I watch back the extended highlights, I make notes, yeah.
Oh, you do more preparation than I do then. Anyway, carry on.
Yes. And Edwards puts the ball in. Lovely cut back for Peppel. At the time, I sort of said, "Oh, blimey, Peppel should be on a hat trick now." Seeing it again, I think it's more of a good save than a bad finish. He's very much could have scored, but it's a good save by Peterborough goalkeeper Alex Vass. So very dominant Argyle performance, and genuinely only really in stoppage time did we go to ultra defensive. Even up to about minutes sort of 85, 86, we were still throwing men forward, pressing them, attacking them. Only really in that stoppage time did we take off Tolai and just at that point just sit deep. But genuinely, even that's not really a criticism, because even then, in that whole 11 minutes of stoppage time, which actually would played out at about 13 and a half minutes, even then, Peterborough didn't create anything remotely resembling a strong chance in that entire, near quarter of an hour of stoppage time. Really, really encouraged. I've always felt like at some of the games, like the Wickham 1-0, the Port Vale 1-0, the Rotherham 1-0, I've almost been feeling like a bit of a misery gut sat here saying, we've got to win, but I'm still, and it is improved, but I'm still not really sure how sustainable the performance is. And what I saw yesterday was not that. And Tom Cleverley said it himself in the post-match interview, which I'm sure will come more to Tom Cleverley in a minute. People are mentioning him in the comments, asking if we've changed the views, and Aaron's going to ask about him as well. But what I will say is what Tom Cleverley said in the post-match absolutely endorsed that. And he said that was not just a win, it was a really sustainable performance. And he actually used that word, sustainable. I don't propose for a minute to think that he's been watching the podcast, but it's good to know that he and I have come to the same conclusions, that better level of performance was really, really needed. And that's what we got yesterday. I've rarely recall leaving a game so impressed by the overall standard of performance. And I know we did win 4-0 at Burton and Doncaster, but they were both very weak opponents on the day. And we honestly had enough chance creation that we could have won 4-0 yesterday against a much stronger team. I think our XG was something like 3.3 and theirs was about 0.2. So it's very much, it could have been 3-0, maybe even 4-0 on another day. Can't say anything other than a tremendously impressive performance, and probably the best we've played since Stephen Schumacher departed the club on a helicopter on that fateful day in December of 2023. There are a few other contenders, and I'm interested to hear in the comments which other games in that post-Schumacher era people think might have been better. Obvious contenders would be maybe the 3 FA Cup games, Nanskaville and then 2 under Muslich. Maybe the Blackburn home under Rooney, and maybe the Middlesbrough away under Ian Foster. But I honestly think yesterday tops the lot, and maybe the Burton and Doncaster under Cleverley. But all of as good as all the above were, I think yesterday for sheer clinical total dominance tops the lot. And I'm just glad to be here with a big smile on my face, talking about how happy watching that performance made me, because I've not done that too many times this season.
Well, that completely ruins the next question. Cheers, Sam, about best performance since Shuey left. James,
we can ask the other two about that.
Yeah, I'm sure. James, before we get into our positives, then obviously you were there on co-com's duties. Just how disappointing were Peterborough? I was expecting so much more from a Luke Williams side especially after their recent results. I just thought they were half-assed.
Yeah, I think I think what is with the Luke Williams side and Peterborough's the form over the last few months is that they had such a blueprint. They had such a clear style of play, and there was a very clear direction of how Cleverley could really get at Peterborough and disrupt them, and that's the game plan that we really put into place. Like, I was really worried about their midfield dominance. I thought Archie Collins would have a field day in the middle, especially if we play a 4-4-2 and their 4-2-3-1, their extra man sort of drops into midfield. We could have been seriously under the cosh. But the players put Cleverley's plan into effect so well, with the physicality of Talai and Peppel just absolutely dominating their back line. They just couldn't handle the physicality. All they could manage was sideways passing. So yeah, I expected a lot more, but it's some of the kind of performances we saw in a way reversed under Schumacher, where we were really struggling to if a team really pressed our kind of sitting midfielders, and again under Rooney as well, if anyone really pressed us, we just struggled to get our game going. It was like that in reverse. I haven't really seen us do that to teams too much over the last few years, where we've really exploited a weakness so ruthlessly. So yeah, I did expect more, but you could see the hallmarks of a Luke Williams team were there to be exposed, and we just did it so well.
Adam, coming on to you, not for the first time.
I say
this isn't getting promoted on Passotti now, is it? Jesus, language like that. Anyway, let's get back to the question, Adam. Sam's already touched on it, how good our performance was, and do you agree? But it's definitely the best performance of our season so far for me. But how good is it compared to all of the games since Sir Stephen Schumacher left, as Sam would call him?
Yeah, well up there. I think the only one that I don't think's been mentioned is the Millwall game just after the Liverpool win in the FA Cup, where we stuck 5 past them and really played them off the park. Although again, that was very much a clinical nature, and I'm pretty sure our XG yesterday was a little bigger than it was.
That one was also very good, but that kind of, to me, had a bit of a sense of almost everything we hit went in. Whereas I think the others all had a bit more chance creation.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I'd say it had less chance creation than, say, the Blackburn game that you mentioned under Rooney, which I think we were good, don't get me wrong, but I think the Millwall game just tops it. But I think this even tops that as well. And it's I think, like Sam said, after we disagree on one point, we'll absolutely agree on another, that performance alone filled with so much joy and so much to be encouraged about going forward, as to how actually, yes, it is sustainable. And yes, these results, whilst we've had an upturn in results, we haven't necessarily seen swashbuckling performances. We sure as hell have now, because that really was tremendous. I think the way we planned for the game, the way we acted out of possession, we only had 32% of the ball in that game. And we knew that was going to be the case. But our pressing triggers were fantastic. The way we got in their faces with our physicality was brilliant. And it was chance after chance after chance heading our way. And I think this, possibly combined with Doncaster, is the time where I can look at this and again say, yes, I've got something to hang my hat on. Yes, I genuinely believe now that what Tom Cleverley's doing can work. Before, there were some games away from home where, yes, we've been getting wins. It's not the first 1-0 away win that we've got. We've had the Wickham one. We've had the Port Vale one that we can mention, and no doubt a few others. But this one wasn't your classic 1-0 smash and grab away performance. Like, okay, we've got the win, but it was a pretty bad game. If we scored 4 goals yesterday, Peterborough could have absolutely no complaints. We were that good. And I think if we delve into it and what Luke Williams is doing, I mean, he was going into this game with what I believe to be the best league win percentage by a Peterborough manager since the 60s. Yes, his sample size is small, and yes, that is naturally going to come down with time. But it just goes to show what sort of form they've been in. Just goes to show how well they've pulled themselves away from being bottom of the league. And we've gone to their backyard and completely played them off the park. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I thought, yes, they did look very ordinary, but we made them look ordinary. Our game plan was spot on. And I'm hoping, again, we've had some false dawns. None have felt quite like this. None have felt quite like, with perhaps the exception of the Burton game, where we've genuinely played a team off the park and we can look forward to building on the back of it. This, on the back of the results we've had, getting this performance in as well to go along with it, yeah, it encourages me no end, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, it gives us a lot to hang our hat on and potentially see where this Cleverley side could go. Sam, Adam touched on it there, like the Millwall game. If everything we hit went in, we could have won yesterday by a substantial margin. Bim Pepple could have maybe had a hat-trick on his own, I think. But that Bim Talai partnership is exceptional, isn't it? And we just have to enjoy it for the 6 or so months we've got of it, right?
Yeah, well, first I'd say if everything we hit went in, we could have scored 7. If even like a normal amount of stuff went in, we could have scored 3 or 4.
You know when you play FIFA and you set everything to 99 and like you do a simple sideways pass and it rockets top corner, that would be exceptional if we could do that.
Yeah, I like there are some games where sort of everything you hit goes in or almost, and it's like I get what you're saying, and you score quite a bit more than your XG. There's a lot of games when you score about what your XG should be, and then there's games like yesterday where you score less than your XG. So if we'd have like been even on a par with our XG, we'd have scored 3, maybe 4. If we'd have had a Millwall-esque game where our finishing was exceptionally good and the keeper was bad, we could genuinely have scored like 7. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Obviously, that didn't happen, but our performance was still good enough to justify winning by 3 clear goals, maybe by 4. Going back to your question about the 2, and let's not forget, by the way, we've still got Owen Aseni to come back, who was absolutely probably coming into the form of his life just before his injury, because his last actual substantial game he played for us was the Doncaster game. He got 3 assists and 1 goal. Reading, he was subbed off as the sacrificial lamb 15 minutes into the game after Joe Rawls' red card. And Wickham, he was subbed off even earlier into the game because he got injured. So the last actual substantial games he played were Doncaster, where he got 1 goal and 3 assists. Rotherham, obviously, he wasn't great the home game. But then Wickham, he got the winning goal. And he would have some really impressive performances in the weeks leading up to that. So Owen Aseni, by the way, let's not sleep on him with the Pepple improvement and Tolai being the best striker in the league. I'm actually confident saying that now quite comfortably.
Only thing I'd pull you up on there, Sam, is when you say Owen Aseni's form of his life, that's because he's previously played at a lot lower levels. So therefore, this is going to be the form of his life, isn't it? Fair point, actually, yeah. But you know, Owen Aseni in very commendable, impressive form. Yeah.
If he comes back from injury and in anything like the same form that he did before he got injured, all of a sudden we could have 3 quite impressive strikers on our hands. Pepple was very good yesterday. A comment from Kieran, brother of friend of the pod, Dan Ellard, in the comments.
Friend of the pod? You demoted him already, have you? Just because he's not been on for a couple of weeks.
Sorry, podcaster Dan Ellard, my apologies. We can't overlook the fact he missed 3 or 4 golden chances. I don't disagree with that. He certainly, I would say the Edwards cutback one wasn't a golden chance, but the one from the Curtis cross definitely was. So I don't disagree with the point that he could have scored more and that his finishing wasn't great. Based on what me and Adam have said, I suppose the only implicit criticism you could make is that the only area of performance that was subpar yesterday was the finishing. Everything else was excellent. So, yeah, I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, as you said yourself, Pepple's general play was very good indeed. And I think really what we're seeing with him is a player who's really learning, and credit to Tom Cleverley and the coaches. I think maybe a consequence of good coaching, because he had always been, even in August when we were terrible, a player who made smart off-the-ball runs. Even when he had that run where he was playing before Talai came in, he made smart off-the-ball runs. The kind of difference was that, A, we as a team weren't really good enough to pick out those runs and build up chances. And B, even when we did play the ball to him, for quite a big guy, his physical presence earlier in the season was pretty much non-existent. He didn't win his duels. Whereas now, not only is he still making those smart runs, we have a better team to play the ball to him, and he's getting so much better at using his body in the right way. I don't know what the stats say about his aerial duel or ground duel win percentage as the season's gone on. I would wager they've become a lot better. And certainly even the ones he doesn't win, he gives the defenders enough to think about that the second and third ball goes to Argyle, particularly when we had employed such a strong trigger pressing strategy as what we did yesterday. Sorry, Nicola's telling me to breathe. I'm getting so excited about the performance yesterday. I'm getting myself a little bit carried away. But yes, Peppel is improving enormously. And I think yesterday, what we even saw yesterday was his ball control starting to get a bit better. We've seen so many times where the ball bounces off him like a pinball machine going left, right, and centre. But I do think he managed to just take that first touch and calm the play down a little bit more before picking out a pass yesterday. Really exceptional game from Peppel in terms of general play. Only thing that let him down is his finishing, which is kind of mad to say, given he scored a goal, scored the winning goal. But yeah, could have scored more. And all of a sudden, we're in a position where Peppel is coming into good form. Orseni was in very good form before getting injured. And Talai, to me, is in the front runner to be in League One team of the season, maybe even outright League One player of the season, quite potentially. So all of a sudden, it does look quite good in terms of our striking options. Could we potentially bring in another striker? Yes, we could. But reading the room of the comments that's been made, we've probably only got room for maybe one more, maybe two more. So if that's the case, ultimately, I think there's probably some other areas that need prioritising a bit more than striker. I think certainly another fullback, maybe even another centre-back if Pleggy's going to be injured for the foreseeable. But I would like a fourth striker, yes, particularly if we continue to play two up front.
That's good. I don't remember asking you that, Sam, but thanks for answering that anyway. James, I'm going to come to you on Talai in a minute, but before that, Adam...
Go on.
I did pre-warn you. Can Bim sneak into Canada's World Cup squad?
Well, I think the problem we have here is very much at their end rather than ours, because Bim Peppel is still eligible for England at this stage in his career. He's not got any senior caps for Canada. He's eligible for England. I check he's also available for Nigeria as well. Nigeria admittedly not going to the World Cup. So I think ultimately what we're going to end up with is that Peppel's going to have a couple of options to go to the World Cup next year, or this year, I should say. I mean, I'd quite like to see him in the England squad, but if he has to settle for Canada, then I suppose that's fair enough.
I'm actually really surprised he doesn't have a random Canada call-up. Jesse Marsh feels like the sort of man to call up a random League One striker, though.
He's not going to get the chance to soon once Thomas Tuchel does.
No, very true. James, Lawrence Talai, I obviously didn't score yesterday, but I just feel like I tweeted about it, like his release clause, just whatever it is, isn't enough. I feel like he's maybe become like the Morgan Whittaker of this season, where he's just so good that we just don't really give him enough. We don't talk about him enough. But he was excellent yesterday again.
Yeah, he was. His all-round attributes. I think that's what makes him such a great player, and why his release clause is definitely a third of what it should be. Is that his feet, the quality of his touch and his feet in sort of tight areas, his ability to bring other people into play, his physicality, speed. Just got that. You don't really see strikers at this level with so much of an all-round game. So yeah, obviously it was his strength to knock O'Connor off the ball for the goal, and it was him and Peppel that were causing chaos in their back line, and he could have easily had a goal. It's probably his worst shooting performance possibly for Argyle. Like it was 3 chances. I don't think he hit the target or forced a save out of any of them. There was sort of 2 kind of speculative efforts, and then that one where he got one-on-one. The angle got a bit tight, and then he sort of went for power and completely blazed it wide. But if we can win, with that kind of performance from him, where he isn't quite at it in terms of how clinical he can be, then that speaks volumes about the quality of the performance and how we've changed as a team over the last sort of 6 weeks.
Another player that's looking quite a good addition, Adam. You've not been on since we signed Ronan Curtis, obviously, but you did do a brilliant in-depth what to expect piece, and actually that got me really excited before his performance up at Bristol Rovers. But he was pretty good again yesterday, right, Ronan Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, considering he was making his competitive debut for us, I thought it was a really encouraging one. You've kind of said it right there. I think going into that and writing that, I felt more encouraged than most actually when Curtis arrived, for the simple reason that his creation stats in both the last 2 seasons and indeed throughout his career have generally been very good. And I think there's been, I mean, it's not often that you'll find me this season defending the board or the decision making in the transfer market in these circumstances, but I think what we've done with bringing in Curtis as in effect a replacement for Ballymumba feels like a very good move. Now, that's not to say that I think Ronan Curtis is fantastic and Ballymumba's dreadful, but Curtis is clearly, I think, if we're going to persist with this 4-4-2, much more suited to this system than Ballymumba would have ever been. So already you're looking at a plus there. I think the fact that we've made a profit as a result of the dealings, I think the fact that we've clearly reduced our wage bill as a result of this, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not part of the question, but if there's more to be said on Mumba, then I think there's a wider conversation on how we managed him over the 4 years. But this move, getting Curtis in, I think was very shrewd. And I think there was an example of that based on his performance yesterday. I mean, nobody's made more key passes in this game than Ronan Curtis. He's got himself involved in just about everything we did well. He's clearly, he's already got a partnership with Delay from his Port Vale days, so the understanding is already there. And I think just his set pieces as well, the fact that we've got that as an option as well. That him combining with Rawls, getting our set piece chances together, there's so much that I think Ronan Curtis brings to this side that is going to encourage us. Now, to be honest, he's been unlucky in his career and he's been his own worst enemy at times. There was a time, I think, back in his Portsmouth days where it looked clearly like he was going to go into the Championship and beyond. He was making senior appearances for the Republic of Ireland. He came back unfit for one summer, and the year after that got an ACL injury. So his career's kind of been blown right off that path. But I think if we signed this player from his Portsmouth days, everyone would immediately be excited by him because of how he's played against us in the past. There was one game where he was absolutely unplayable against the Derek Adams Argyle in 2018. So bringing in that player, albeit at a different stage of his career, he's still got the talent there. And I think he's clearly showing it right now. I think it's a case of stay fit, stay in shape, and suddenly the fact that we've got this guy on a 2.5-year contract is going to seem like a really, really good piece of business if he can keep it up.
Yeah, so we could see an Argyle player at the World Cup then, just Ronan Curtis for Ireland.
Well, I mean, and Bin Pebble for England, as we know. Yeah. We could see too.
For sure.
And Denny for Ireland as well. Lauren to live for Switzerland. There's all sorts of options.
Is Switzerland qualified?
Yes.
Oh,
they qualify for every tournament.
Qualify, honestly.
Yeah, they're the most efficient qualifying team, pretty much outside of the elite, I would say.
Oh, okay, Adam, how likely are we to see Lauren Talay at the World Cup for Switzerland?
I have a feeling he's still eligible for Kosovo, so maybe they'll get there as well. And that could genuinely be an option, to be fair. Although perhaps he'll have his sights set higher. We'll see. Maybe he's again going to be another one in this team who has got a choice of options to go.
Hazard for Northern Ireland. Don't forget that one. They could still qualify. Who knows?
Yeah, I said Plymouth Argyle player. So, James, I think we all, but by we all, Sam and Adam have already raved about Joe Rawls, but just an excellent midfielder, isn't he? That's not much of a question, but you just run with it like he does.
It's just a true statement. Yeah. There's a lot of chatter online about the Derek coming into the setup and the improvement, but that milestone also coincides with Joe Rawls' fitness. Obviously, when he came in as a free agent, he wasn't immediately able to hit the ground running. It was a few weeks before he came in, and that sort of period was a time where he actually started to start in the side. And yeah, his the stats with him and without him are quite stark, even if they are fundamentally problematic. But then even in isolation, the Bristol Rovers game where we left him on the bench and the lack of control we had in the game until he came on, I think there's just enough out there to show that basically he makes the whole side tick and everything good we do starts with him as a bedrock. I mean, he obviously got man of the match, or player of the match, I saw on Twitter. It was an amazing performance. I've seen the little highlights reel of good, tidy midfield work that the club put out. But for what for once, I just want to say, it probably wasn't all about rules yesterday. It was a brilliant performance in the middle of the pitch for sure. So his level of performance is just so high for us right now, and just he makes the whole squad tick. But it really was that front two, and with Boateng charging out of midfield, able to disrupt the Peterborough sort of back line and Archie Collins. And I guess perhaps then you could extrapolate that was only possible. It's only possible for Boateng to charge out and start pressing if he knows that there's got a quality midfielder behind him. So everything good we do has some link back to Joe Rawls. Yeah,
I'm seeing comparisons online of Diego Raga and his impact from Derek's last spell. We'll get on to your thoughts on Cleverley and whether the board need any credit. There's quite a few questions that I've starred. So if anybody's got any more they want they want me to ask the panel, please get them in the comments. Sam, Joe Edwards, he won 100% of his duels yesterday. Not bad for a player on the wane, is it?
No, absolutely.
I will preface that with that I set you up for that question last week, so I'll take some credit. But you did say he was basically hanging up his boots, didn't you? So
Well, and very much heavily prompted by you questioning me to that effect. But yes, Look, I kind of joked earlier about maybe Tom Cleverley was listening to the podcast, but if Joe Edwards was listening to Wednesday night's show, he certainly would have had a point to prove, and he absolutely showed it in full force with his performance yesterday. I think, like I said, there were a lot of players who deserve a lot of praise. Obviously, you've sort of prompted James and Adam for two of them. I fully agree on Curtis and on Rawls. I think just very quickly calling back something Simon Hallett said at the fan forum. He said, actually, one of the problems we've had with signings is we've not used data as much as we previously did, and we're going to now go back to using data more. Well, if that results in Ronan Curtis, listen, fair play, Simon. That looks like, we've absolutely knocked it out of the park by going back to more data. So, his cross is exceptional. I've never seen such a good crosser of a ball in many, many years. Maybe Graham Carey, George Cooper in the last two, but Curtis is such a better all-rounder than Cooper, and obviously Carey, quite possibly maybe even on a par if he can stay fit. But the player, obviously, you've asked me to talk about is Joe Edwards. So what I'd say about him is it looked like he suddenly de-aged 5 years yesterday. Not in his physical appearance, of course. He'd always been a tremendously well-groomed man, but in the way he played, he looked like he de-aged 5 years. He was the Duracell bunny again. He was running back and forth, lots of energy. Like I said, he came up more than anyone apart from Curtis in my notes. It was him who put some dangerous balls to the box. It was him who cut the ball back for Peppel, for the Peppel chance in the second half. For the Curtis cross that led to the very early Talai chance, it was the great pressing by Joe Edwards that won us the ball back in the first place. So he absolutely looked like he was, high on life yesterday. He looked like the Joe Edwards of old. Maybe it was just the fact that he played a lot of games. He sort of found that second wind from summer. Maybe it was a bit of a confidence block, readjusting to this shape, this system. So who knows if we can get that, new life out of Joe Edwards in the long run, or maybe yesterday was maybe a bit of a flash in the pan. But credit when due, that did not look remotely any way, shape or form like a player who was on the wane yesterday. He was one of our best players, probably only behind Curtis and Rawls and borderline Peppel, depending on how much credit you want to deduct from Peppel for the missed chances. He was probably only behind Curtis, Rawls and Peppel in the performance yesterday. But a player who was very, very close to him, who I also want to mention in a positive light, is a player who I've criticised quite a lot this season, certainly who the wider fans have criticised quite a lot this season, and who has had his word back to the fans on Instagram, and that's Matti Sorinola. I thought that was his best performance of the season yesterday as well, or certainly right up there, maybe on a par with the Luton game, just because, again, he looked like a man possessed in his pressing. I think it's important to note that...
You'll correct me on this, Sam, but is it 2 years this week that we signed him?
Somebody just said that in the comments, 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago this week that we signed Matti Sorinola. And look, I think he's kind of had a bit of an up and down journey with Argyle. That first half season under Foster, he was sort of hit and miss. He barely played under Rooney. Muslich got the best out of him for sure. And this season has been pretty much one he'd rather forget for most of it, barring, like I say, that Luton game and one or two others. But he has really had a good game yesterday. And I think one of the things I want to mention without going too far into the tactics truck, as it were, is one of the main faults that me and indeed Dan have both mentioned on previous podcasts is that we're too narrow a team. Putting Curtis, and as much as I think Amici and Watts are good players, and Amici and Watts will have a role to play this season, I don't think we'd have been as good yesterday if we played Amici and Watts, because Curtis and Sorinola, they love to get chalk on their boots, hug the touchline, stretch the play, use the wide areas, both on the ball and off the ball. Curtis is obviously on his natural foot, right-footed player. Sorinola, obviously on the left side, was not on his natural foot, but it just goes to show that although typically players on their wrong foot cut inside more and players on their natural foot hug the touchline more, that's actually clearly not always the case. Sorinola, although on his unnatural foot, did hug the touchline, did stretch the play, did get out wide. Certainly off the ball, his pressing was phenomenal, which I've said about almost everyone. And when he did regain the ball with good pressing, even though he was on his unnatural foot, often he would then come inside a little bit to allow Galloway at left back to overlap. So, you know, it's not cut and dry. Just because you're on your unnatural foot doesn't mean you can't, you know, stretch the play, get chalk on your boots, use the wide areas, because there is a danger in being too narrow. And we absolutely have done that very much in recent weeks and months. But Sorinola and indeed, obviously Edwards at right back and indeed Curtis at right midfield, all really stretching the play. And that is very, very encouraging to see from all of the above players mentioned there. And again, I know I've said this particular point a few times tonight in and of itself. That was, I think, possibly one of the best out of possession performances in terms of pressing. The pressing was just extraordinary. Like one would go, they'd all go with them. We absolutely knew what the triggers were to press. When they tried to take a bit too much time on the ball, Peterborough sort of played themselves into trouble, and we were relentlessly punishing with it. As Plim 1969 says in the comments, we did stop the inverted fullback tactic. To be fair, I think that was kind of to the extent of because Sorinola, as I mentioned, sometimes did come inside, that allowed Galloway to overlap instead. So we kind of had an inverted wide midfielder instead. But there's nothing wrong with a little bit of inverting. Just don't everybody invert all the time. And I think yesterday we got the balance perfectly right on that one. So that's my final word on the wide players.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the comments is raving about the scenes in the AFCON final right now. The football just says it's interrupted. I'm not watching.
Senegal have walked off. Not that I want to say that I'm not paying attention to what Sam was saying there, but on my other screen, I've just watched Senegal walk off the pitch at a penalty decision that's gone against them in the last minute. They seem to be coming back on. So
maybe this is a Suarez-esque tactic in which they will celebrate the saved pen. Oh yeah, delay over. They're ready to continue. Thank you, Adam. Although if you're listening back to this on podcast platforms, you already know all of that and you know who the winners are. So let us know. Is there any much point in doing a ref watch? I don't really care. Harry Leonard's okay, which is good to hear.
Yeah, and it wasn't a foul. Like, you know, this is part of the game, isn't it? It's a contact sport. These things are going to happen. We're glad he's all right, but he's not been fouled. So I think the complaints there were quite odd. I think, if anything, Peterborough are quite lucky not to be down to 10 within 5 minutes. But yeah.
O'Connor should have got a second yellow. I think, was it O'Connor? I think it was O'Connor.
It was, yeah.
Yes, it was O'Connor. Should have got a second yellow. That, to me, is just an absolute classic of... I've just booked the player. He's committed a clear bookable offence, but I can't send him off this early in the game. Cowardly refereeing. If a decision is justified, you make the decision. Don't think too much about, how's it going to impact the game? That's the player's fault for making a stupid foul when he's on a yellow. That's not for you as the referee to play God, you know? So, yeah, it should have gone. As to the rules incident, I think it was a foul. I certainly don't think it was a red card like some Peterborough fans are saying. I think there is a difference between, we talk about the difference between expected goals and actual goals. There is a difference between challenges that have a very high likelihood of endangering a player's safety, and there is, whether they do or don't happen. And there's a difference between challenges that do end up, causing an injury to a player, but as a result of bad fortune. And I think that challenge goes into the the latter territory. I don't think he'd absolutely. It's not like the old Harry Kane trick of backing into a defender and sending him flying that you maybe sort of do back in his Tottenham days. That he's got the right to go for the ball. Does he maybe follow through a bit recklessly? Possibly. If it foul, I think it's probably just about correct. I wouldn't have even complained if you'd given a yellow. But Peterborough fans saying Rawls should have been sent off for that. Totally disagree, I'm afraid. What's happened is Harry Leonard has fallen very awkwardly, landed very badly, and thank goodness he's okay. That's the most important thing in all of it. But you can't make every decision based on the consequence, because sometimes the consequences are bad fortune and falling awkwardly, is my 2 pennies worth on that.
It's similar, I guess, to, I think there was a challenge, was it Harvey Elliott against Leeds a few years ago, where I think the ref's gone to not give a foul, realises he's actually seriously injured, and then decided he's going to send the player off. You can't ref like that. You can't. I mean, we can have an argument as to whether it was a foul or a yellow or whatever. It's not no hope of it being a. Sorry. The
penalty saved in the AFCON.
The penalty
saved. I told you.
He penenkered it down the middle and it was caught. This is the 114th minute of normal time, and he's penenkered the penalty down the middle and missed it. So we're going to be able to, we'll probably be finished here by the time this is done. So I can go to what I'm really concentrating on this evening. But you guys carry on.
We fought to lie Penenkering at a chance to make it 3-2 at home to Reading on Boxing Day was bad. Penenkering in the 114th minute of an AFCON final for the chance to win your first AFCON in goodness knows how many years as a nation is.
In your own country as well. Let's just add all that there. Yeah, shocker.
Have we ever had any active Argyle players representing an AFCON?
Apart from Galloway literally this season, you mean? Or...
Yeah, I mean previously.
I don't think we have.
I mean, was Panucci Kamara representing?
Oh, Kamara, yes, he was. Yes, of course.
He didn't go to AFCON though, did he? That
was my thought. I know he definitely represented the nation.
No, he did.
I know they have qualified.
No, he did. It was January 2020. No, I don't know how I didn't remember. January 2022. It was the day I remember vividly. We played Sheffield Wednesday away, and we stayed in Sheffield overnight. That was the 4-2 loss to Randall free kick game. And one of our group, we went to watch the Guinea-Bissau game in a bar in Sheffield after the game, and one of our group got asked to put away their Guinea-Bissau flag because you can't have club colours or country colours. That genuine thing that happened. He very much did miss a few games due to AFCON in 2022.
They're very anti-Guinea-Bissau in Sheffield. James, getting back onto Argyle topics, I think it's fair to say that you were a bit of a Cleverly skeptic, shall we say, early on. Have you changed your mind at all? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I tried to write on this, and a couple of times I've actually had 2 unpublished newsletters I've just deleted because each time I actually put pen to paper, the situation changes. So I've been trying to be a bit more thoughtful about it. So the last time I actually released a newsletter was the one that said end Tom Cleverley's reign of terror, which was at the end of November. I think you have to say that we have to give Cleverley credit that he has turned it around, and he's turned it around slowly and surely. Starting with grinding out results and riding our luck and building and getting players back and making additions. And it's obviously the last blip on that recovery is that fantastic performance yesterday. So we'll come on to credit for the board in a minute. I do think we have to, 2 things can be true. Give him a lot of credit for turning it around. Yes, he's winning me over. Still things that the recovery still kind of feels fragile, even though the record is now quite impressive. Like, was it 3 losses? Only 3 losses in 12. But also that I do believe his inexperience was a major factor in the meltdown we had kind of between the small resurgence in October and the middle of December, where we were woeful. I do think a more experienced manager with a stronger footballing identity and a bit more nous could have navigated that period a lot better. And yes, there were lots of mitigating factors. Yes, there was a team that was gelling. I think the Peppel and it's a sort of Pepple redemption arc. Shows that a lot of players kind of playing themselves into the league at the same time. Ross has talked about needing time to get up to speed. Pepple obviously needed to get time. I think there was a lot of that going on at the same time. Obviously, we were very depleted. I think the profile of the squad that they, to quote, was not quite right in that we didn't have the right sort of characters in midfield, and bringing Rawls in has stabilised that. But so I think I don't regret calling out for Cleverley's head when we did, because the situation was so bleak, and I do think other managers or other more experienced managers would have navigated that better. But I have to say, if you criticise, you have to give credit, and the revival has been remarkable. I didn't think it could be done, and it's been done it feels like it's being done in a sustainable way. Why did I say he's winning me over and not won me over? Well, I do think there's improvements need to be made. Everything's topsy-turvy. The waveform is so amazing from what we've seen over the last few years, but how can we be this poor at home? So how can we grow from what we've seen to being able to impress our style of football at Home Park, and how can we create results and good entertaining performances at Home Park? So he hasn't won me over. Is that identity being forged now with high press physicality? Will the hallmarks of Peterborough become our identity and something we can transfer to Home Park? But can we dominate possession, and can we set tempo and dictate ourselves? Or are we simply a team that reacts well to other teams, that sends us in good stead away from home, but when teams come to us and want to defend, it turns into the sort of turgid beige ball that we've seen so far? So winning me over, don't regret what I said, but some way to go.
Yeah, we'll get into the ball question in a minute. We're going to jump onto the viewers' questions, Adam. Lots of people giving credit to Derek Adams, probably because they're an avid anti-TC and don't want to give him any credit yet. As soon as we lose, it's all on Tom Cleverley. How much credit do you give to each of them?
Yeah, plenty in every sense. Because I think I agree with practically everything that James said there. I think you have to work with the evidence that you have in front of you. And the evidence that we had in front of us in November, at the end of November, was that this is an absolute car crash. Something needs to change, and there's one very obvious thing that needs to change. All of that being said, look, let's put it this way. I ended up being proved wrong about Victor Paulson being a world-class centre-back. If I end up being proved wrong about Tom Cleverley not being a very good head coach, I'll be much, much happier having it this way around. And right now, there's a chance that it will be that way around, because I think, as has been said before, it's not just the results this time that are giving me huge encouragement as to what Tom Cleverley is doing. It's the way we played. And I think the best compliment I can give is that this is what we were promised. This is what we were told at the start of the season that Plymouth Argyle would look like. It was implied that, top 6 budget, we're going for it. We're going to be fighting at the right end of the table. And we've seen nothing like that beforehand until yesterday, where we outplayed a team away from home. It almost felt like, yes, this is what Tom Cleverley football is supposed to look like, and why we were so excited when he was initially employed back in June. So Tom Cleverley gets a lot of credit for that. As James has said, and I agree, there's still bits to do. There's still some way to go. Ultimately, being 14th this season is not what we want. So that there's still a lot to play for and a lot to build on. But yeah, he deserves an absolute ton of credit for turning it around to this point. And I really do hope it continues, because let's put it in ways that we've spoken about before, that none of what we were saying, and may indeed say again, depending on what may happen, is personal against Tom Cleverley. If anything, I think we've all appreciated how hard he's been working. We all desperately wanted it to work out for him. And if we're getting to that stage now, it's very good. Now, with the help of Derek Adams, yes, potentially. I think we've seen some of it in the way that we've defended. I think Adams most gets his praise from me for what he's done in the market so far, because of what I've just mentioned with the Curtis and Mumba switch, if you like. There's a bit of money. I hope there's more to come in the transfer market. I know for a fact, obviously, based on what's been said for after a centre back, and I hope Derek Adams can use his contacts again, whatever they may be. But yeah, I think both have come in and performed well. Adams has come in, and since Adams has come in, both he and Cleverley have performed beyond what even I think the most optimistic Argyle fan could have expected from this run. I think I'm only now at the stage where I think, do you know what? This really could be the way forward. Whereas beforehand, it was all very much a case of, okay, sticking plasters, we've got this so far. Is it sustainable? Are we going to go there? With these two at the helm, do you know what? It just might. I really hope it does. It would be absolutely brilliant if it did. And yeah, stuff to do, but I think hats off to both of them so far for the job they've done since the end of November. Really, really, really good stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sam, that question was from Barn Park Greens, I should have said. Sam, just following that up, Argyle Tweets also says we need to have a serious chat about Derek. I'd be interested to see how much TC leans on him. Obviously, you don't know how much, but he seems to be learning an awful lot from him, as Adam's already said. Seems a very mutually beneficial arrangement.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, just to be clear, if, Cleverley's improvement is as a result of listening to Derek Adams, that's not a cheat code. That's not to try and undermine Cleverley or take credit away from Cleverley. That's what the Derek Adams appointment was designed to do in part. It was partially to do recruitment and to run the football side of the club off field, but it was also to provide mentorship and advice to Tom Cleverley. And I think the second part is working fantastically. The first part is working pretty well as well. I would still like to see one or two more in the door, but certainly it's working well with the signing of Curtis. And the second part is working absolutely fantastically. So there's no, shame in that by saying Derek Adams had a tremendous impact. That's not taking credit away from Tom Cleverley. If anything, having the humility to learn from somebody with more experience and somebody whose style of football is very different to the style of football Tom Cleverley clearly prefers to play, as he mentioned, in interviews and as we saw his time at Watford, having that humility to know when you've made some mistakes and learn from it is actually really, really an impressive attribute in a head coach. So please don't think that by highlighting the improvement under Derek Adams that we're somehow taking credit away from Tom Cleverley, because that's absolutely not how it's intended, certainly not by myself. What encouraged me, like I say, more than anything from Tom Cleverley, not just the performance, what he said in the press about that was a more sustainable performance. And by him saying so, that was a very implicit admission that he does not intend for Argyle to play the way we played over December in the long run. And I was actually saying that at the time, possibly it was a bit of an unpopular thing for me to say, because people were saying, well, hang on a minute, Sam, we're winning games. Surely we should stick with this. And I said, well, yeah, we're winning games, but how much longer are we going to keep winning games if we do play in such a way as this? We need to have more in our arsenal. And Tom Cleverley absolutely clearly does agree with me on that, does recognise that. And as such, that was a more expansive performance that we saw in yesterday's game. So, and on the point of Derek Adams, the other point I would like to make is that this blueprint for our revival is exactly the same blueprint as for the Derek Adams 2017-18 season revival, in that we didn't just go from losing every week to, blowing teams out of the water instantly. Far from it. What we went from is we had a run of improving, becoming harder to beat, becoming stodgy, turning the losses into draws, getting 1-0 wins, gritty 1-0 wins, like the 1-0 win away at Wimbledon, the 1-0 away at 1-0 win away at Bradford in that autumn of 2017. Gritty, hard-fought wins, like the ones you've seen. And then just gradually, with the introduction of Lemiras, and although Lemiras wasn't a new signing, he was a reintegrated player, Curtis maybe just plays the role of Lemiras, if we're going to extend this analogy. The player that comes in really adds a bit of attacking sauce, really adds a bit of chance creation, and helps us elevate us from not just a team that's scrappy and gets some wins, but to a really, really threatening team who could trouble the top end of the table, whether it's this season or next. And again, this is not to be reactionary and knee-jerk and say, yeehaw, we're definitely making the playoffs now, because we probably, we still probably won't do. And indeed we didn't in that 17-18 season. But for the first time, I've almost started to believe it might be possible. And part of that isn't just our improvement. It's also the fact that with Stevenage dropping like a stone, Huddersfield are very unconvincing form. The fact that the League One table is so compact, what it's probably going to be this season is one of the highest points totals ever needed to survive in League One. But the flip side of that, with a very compact table, is it's probably going to be one of the lowest points totals needed for top 6. So if we can just sustain the form we've shown for a little bit longer, I still don't think it's likely. I really don't think it's likely, but I don't any longer think it's impossible, which I basically did think before. And to the answer the question somebody asked earlier in the comments, I don't know if Aaron started or not, am I still worried about relegation? No, not anymore. But I'll caveat that a little bit. Of course, there's always a chance if any two of the three of Curtis, Talai, Rawls going to get injured for any long period of time. Yes, there's always a chance. It is a very compact league, so it's not going to be a zero chance. But I no longer think it's a probability. I no longer think it's even approaching a 50-50 chance. I think it's now very much in the realm of unlikely that we go down. You know what? Probably still more likely than making top 6 just because of sheer proximity, points-wise. But both are unlikely. And if we can keep the positive momentum going, who knows? I think what's probably the far more overwhelmingly likely outcome is that neither of those two things happen. And we just come mid-table and it's probably about somewhere around the 10th to 12th region. And it's just
that's really good, Sam. That's why James gets invited on Sky Sports and you don't. Thanks for answering basically the next 3. James, go on.
I was going to jump in and say on the playoff points tally. When people started talking about playoffs a few weeks ago, I had a quick look at what the last season points tally was. It was 78 to get to the top 6, which even at that point was a 2-point PPG required, which was obviously felt quite unrealistic. There's a PPG tracker going around on Twitter with which sets this year's total for 68, which is obviously 10 points fewer required. And I'm going to paraphrase a stolen tweet, so please, don't give me any credit for the stat. And if it's wrong, also don't blame me. But the PPG required for to hit that points tally would be 1.82 from memory, and our PPG since Derek Adams came in is 1.82. So perhaps not as far away as I thought it was a couple of weeks ago.
No, I was going to say Adam was 6 points off playoffs, 4 off the drop. I was going to say, how does our season pan out from here? But Sam's already told us we're going to finish mid-table, and James is telling us that we're going to make playoffs. How do you see it finishing? Because the tweet I saw current form of the last 8 extrapolated out to the end of the season sees us finishing 5th. It's nice.
Yeah, not bad, right? I think this is where it becomes tricky, and perhaps it'll be down to me to put the downer on proceedings. I think playoffs, whilst not impossible, are highly unlikely. Now, the fact we're even saying that they're possible based on what's happening just a month or 2 ago is incredible. So again, hats off to the turnaround there.
People say that we have the most reactionary fan base in the country, and I just don't believe them. We're either going down or going up.
Yeah, I could react to that, but I'm a Plymouth Argyle fan, so I'm going to carry on. I think the fact that we're 4 points away from the relegation zone, 6 points for the player, I would say that when you go beyond 6, I think there is then quite a gap to whoever's in 5th at the moment. So it is kind of everyone's scrapping for the one spot. But I think it's more of a case of from where we were has required significant promotion form to get us to this point. It's now going to require significant promotion form to get ourselves into the top 6, and then significant promotion form for us to stay in the top 6. And that's where it went wrong for us in 17-18. The fact that we'd seemed to be winning every week, got ourselves into the top 6, but then the injuries hit and then we drop out. So even if we do get ourselves into the top 6, I'm not necessarily convinced that we'll stay there, just because of the way football operates and the way that these things happen, and we don't have the best injury record ourselves. So I do think mid-table-ish is where we're likely to end up, but I'd have bitten your hand off for that a few weeks ago. And the fact that we're even contemplating this conversation that we could finish in the top 6 it is testament to just how well the last few weeks have gone. And let's end the transfer window well, and long may that continue.
getting on to the actual question I was going to ask you, James. Where is it? I can't find it. Starred. Where's Starred? Damien Curtis says, do the board deserve more credit? A lot of clubs would have pressed the panic button long ago, and I would have personally.
Yeah, I think the do deserve some credit already. I think we need to see on a lot of things where we finish at the end of the season. We're as a fan base, all fan bases are reactionary. I can't say whether ours is more reactionary than others, but let's just see where we finish at the end of the season, because it was a shocking start. But the scenes at the fans forum, the abuse that's been held at the board through the early part of the season, we can understand people are angry, but let's see at the time. We've seen false dawns. This does seem to be more sustainable. This has been going on for a while, but let's see where we finish at the end of the season. But if we do finish at the end of the season mid-table, we put a strong second half in, we flirt with the playoffs, we just miss out, we just get it. I do think that if this run of form continues or anything close to it, they deserve a lot of credit for not blinking when the easiest decision, the most obvious thing to do, would be to change. And yeah, there were obvious downsides to changing. They had the interest of stability first. If that comes to pass, that we flirt with the playoffs or we end the season positively, then yeah, I think the board should be given credit just as they were given the earful of abuse they got when times were tough.
Adam, I'm going to come to you on this one because Sam's already answered it about 8 questions ago. Superintendent says, do we need any further transfer business? One defender, perhaps. And Andrew Thomas says, given the performance yesterday and the potential returns from injury, what do you now consider the priorities for this transfer window?
Whether it's possible or not, I don't know, but I really, really want another centre-back and another striker. I think centre-back simply for depth options, depending on how Pleguezuelo's injury is going. We know if Jack McKenzie does eventually make his debut, then Galloway could perhaps shift across, which is an option there, but I think we absolutely need another one. And up front, well, for a start, both Oseni and Pepe have had significant spells out with injury this season, but even if both were fit, I mean, we're ultimately playing with 2 up front here. I'd really like to have another option, to have 4 strikers that are going to compete for that position. There's arguments that Caleb Watts could do it in a 2, particularly if he's playing just off Talai. That's an option. So if I had to choose, it would probably be the centre-back, because we really, really are short of numbers there. But I think if we do get those in, suddenly you're looking at a squad that, whilst far from perfect, let's not rewrite history here. The squad is far from perfect for what budget we've got and the season we've gone into. Suddenly looks in a lot better shape than it could have done with those 3 additions that it would be if we get the centre back and striker. We've got we've got McKenzie potentially coming back, which gives us a couple of options in the left back role. We've got Joe Edwards, getting back to his best on the right. Ronan Curtis, a wonderful option for the wings, and yeah, it's another centre back, another striker. I certainly wouldn't say we're there, but I'd absolutely take it right now. If the window was closing tomorrow and we got those 2 in, that'd certainly do me. I doubt we will, for all it's worth. I will say I doubt we will, simply because the mood music, if you like, is very much, we've got room for one more. It could be a case perhaps that some departures then force our hand as well into more incomings. Yeah, I'd imagine we get a centre-back and we're done. I'd love it if we got a striker as well.
Yeah, completely agree. Moving on to a very brief Luton Town preview. 12:30 kickoff. 7th place Luton Town come to Home Park. Sam, how do we convert these away performances into home games?
Well, first thing I'd say is that the home form, while still much worse than the away form, is getting there. The Burton 3-0 was a solid enough performance, admittedly against the weakest opponents for playoff season due to injury depletion. Before that, obviously there was the double header over Christmas of Reading and Wickham was not good. Obviously, Reading, the game was so impacted by the early red, and Wickham, we only really came to life quite late on. Rotherham, we got a win, but didn't play particularly great. But it is still only 1 loss at home of the last 4, and that is worth mentioning. So there is still that to build on to some extent. I think really the problem with the home form kind of was the effect of playing that sort of, I don't want to use the word turgid, but it kind of was turgid. That turgid deep block, hit them on the counter, get a lead and defend a lead style of play is always really going to be a bit more suited to away games than home games. But the fact we've now moved, or appear to be starting to move, to a more aggressive, more intentful style of play, because let's not forget, Burton, caveats of an opposition, Burton we scored 3, could have been even more. Bristol Rovers we scored 4, and Peterborough we scored 1, but created enough clear-cut chances for 3 or 4. So there is absolutely massive signs that we are moving towards a more expansive and attacking style of play, which I've been calling for ages, which I'm happy about. So I suppose what I'm trying to say in my usual long-winded way is that the home form being poor in December or November and December was kind of as much the fact of like the way we were playing was only suited to away games. Whereas we're now moving to a more attacking style of play. In theory, that's going to be just as much suited to home games, if not actually even more so. So there is actually, and players coming back to fitness, as we mentioned. Curtis going to make his first appearance on home park. Galloway back to his best. Edwards had a good game. Peppel really improving week on week. Rawls, I think, has only had 2 losses at home park. One he actually played substantially in because one was the red card. Mackenzie yet to come back soon, as we've mentioned. So when you factor in all the above, Amicia wants to come off the bench, for goodness sake. So when you factor in all the above, there are very valid, non-deluded reasons to believe the home form is about to take a significant upturn. And I'd like to hope that it will do. Because if it doesn't, then something's going wrong. So all that being said, I'm pretty confident going into the next round of 2 home games, Luton, then Mansfield. And I'd really like to hope we get at least 4 points from them, maybe even 6. Luton are quite a flaky team. They've had an absolutely torrid few years as a team, as a club. Obviously sat back Bloomfield mid-table. They brought in Jack Wilshere and he's done about as well as Bloomfield, which is not very so far.
Just checking, Sam. This is still the same question I asked you, right?
Which is the Luton preview, yeah?
No. Just how do we confirm our away performances into home games?
Oh, well.
Carry on.
I kind of answered that about a minute ago, but I've now sort of morphed it into the Luton preview.
Yeah, no, I was just checking. Come on, carry on. Tell us your thoughts
okay.
on Jack Wilshere as well. Go on.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be the second time, cover your ears, Adam. It's going to be the second time we're going to play Luton in the space of about 3 weeks, almost certainly, with the other one being having been drawn away to them in the Virtue Trophy semi-final.
I'm curious that we've arranged a mid-season friendly with them as well. I mean, fair enough, but yeah.
Well, yeah, there is that. So I just think with Luton, with the sort of psychological damage that their fans, their club have had over time, there is just that danger that danger from their point of view, opportunity from our point of view, that if we get on top of them and get an early lead, they could just fold like the proverbial pack of cards. So I am quite quietly confident going into that game. I think going back to the main question, I think what it's going to come down to more than anything is that it should just happen naturally by itself, in the sense of the style of play in November and December was always going to be more suited to away games. The style of play in that we're now moving towards is going to be just as much suited to home games, if not far more so. So that's kind of my view on the matter.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for that. And that's the Luton Town preview. All done. No, James, how do you see Saturday going?
Yeah, I think that I was at the Luton away game, and I was trying to think back to any attributes of Luton that might be susceptible or vulnerable to how we line up now. And actually, it was obviously we were down to 10 men in that game, and it was absolute chaos. So I don't know how much I can bank from that, but we've obviously really increased the physicality of the team from that game. Even Ronan Curtis at 6'2" brings extra physicality in the middle. We've now got Rawls and with assuming we make an unchanged side and bring Peppel and Talai up front, we're going to cause them problems. So, I think they've lost their. I think they haven't got one in their last 4 away games. Our home form is dreadful. So, hopefully, we can elevate a performance in the same way as we elevated the Peterborough performance out of nowhere, and we've reached a new baseline. Hopefully, we can build on a 90-minute performance where I think every other performance at home this season has been in 45-minute or less spells. So yeah, hopefully the confidence from the last game makes us more able to go out there and attack at home and get forward without fear. So there's a chance to keep building. The Peterborough result only matters if we keep building, and especially at home. So I don't think we can expect to keep this level of away form going indefinitely. So we need to build at home, and we need to be braver. We need to create large amounts of chances. That's what we did at Peterborough for the first time. So let's see how we back it up.
Adam, I don't want you to ruin your written preview, but anyone to worry about in that Luton side? Obviously, Nigel Lonvike, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, he's around. He's not particularly doing bits, is he? I mean, yeah, I was impressed with their keeper, Josh Keeley. And then he dropped a clanger against us with giving away that corner for Ibrahim's winner, and has never really been the same player since. So maybe we've broken him, and maybe that'll help us to eventually get over the line again. I think the thing is, on paper, their strike force is excellent. And it's exactly the sort of strikers that I think we were looking for. I remember when they were all going to Luton, the likes of Naki Wells, Jerry Yates, etc., going to Luton in the transfer window and thinking, why on earth are we nodding for these guys? You know, how are they sweeping them up? It hasn't quite worked. I mean, none of them have scored more than twice in the league, which I think possibly says a lot. And I think we're well placed to take the game to them. I would just say, actually, I think we as a crowd possibly have a part to play in this, because for the obvious reason of creating the atmosphere of a good run of form and getting on top of Luton, as Sam has described. If we get ahead against them, they could crumble. But I think they actually play in a very, very similar way to Peterborough, in that keeping possession's paramount. When they're at their best, they can be great, but when they're at their worst, it can feel like they're passing the ball around with no real aim, as I think you could certainly say Peterborough were yesterday. Now, putting the performance in that we did away from home was fantastic. It's almost an argument that saying, at possession or at home, having 30% possession isn't good enough. Why are we playing like this? I think if we're patient, actually, and we encourage us to play as we did against Peterborough, we can very easily see those results again. We just need to make the most of our time on the ball and create some good chances, as we just have. And who cares what they're doing if they're passing the ball around the centre circle? So I think some encouragement from the crowd, some patience from the crowd as well. If it's a case of, we've given the ball away again, this is a disaster. We don't need that for this one. It's a very winnable game, but it could be a very winnable game in a specific way, i.e., we let them have the ball in less dangerous areas and really hit them like we did to Peterborough yesterday. May have been a slight Sam Down style tangent, that one, but yeah, a few players mentioned, and a look at the general style perhaps, but I certainly think we can do it. I certainly do.
Sam, question from PAFC Dome. Let's wrap this up. Has asked, will Canadian World Cup star Bim Peppel score against his former club? You can answer that one and give us your score prediction and whatever tangent you like. You can go on. Yes.
Peppel the score. 2-0 to Argyle. Tangent in the remaining 5-ish minutes, however long it is left on this podcast. I want to add, it struck me yesterday that in all competitions, we are going to count the Virtue Trophy. I know that Adam doesn't like the competition. I absolutely get it. But
correction, you are going to count it.
Okay. Well, officially in the statistical books, it counts the competitive fixture, and clubs do treat it as a competitive fixture. We have won 6 out of our last 7 fixtures away from home. Even in the Derek Adams era of being the best away team in the league, even in the best of the low Schumacher years, I can't recall when we ever won 6 out of 7 away games. I know we won the 5 away games in a row to end the title season, but that was, I think, preceded by 2 winless games on the road before that. So if anyone can suggest either in the comments, or I appreciate there's not much time left on the pod, or even if you're listening back, put it on, tweet us, put us, Facebook us. When have we ever won 6 out of our last 7 away games? I don't think it's happened in a very long time at all, really. It would have happened ever because our all-time record of winning away games in a row is 11. So logically, we would have won more than 6 out of 7 in that streak. But last time we actually won 6 out of 7 away games, I don't think it's happened in probably at least 20 years. Maybe the Paul Sturrock 102 point season might be the one where it did happen. But yeah, open to suggestions.
Nice. Azam, score prediction?
I don't have a similar interesting tangent to go off, but I am going to put the same score out there. I think 2-0 Argyle. I think we're really well placed to take the game to them if we play the same way. And yeah, fancy our chances.
James?
There's so much 2-0 Argyle going on this pod and in the chat. It can only mean a heavy defeat. But 2-0 was the 2-0 was the scoreline. I'm going to go 2-1. I don't think our clean sheet. We'll keep a clean sheet at home. I think 2-1.
No, I wouldn't mind winning from behind. So I'd go 3-2. The away scoreline, but reversed. James, any more tangents you want to go on before you leave?
I just was a little tangent thinking about the 6 out of 7 away wins. It just sums up everything that's so wrong and topsy-turvy about this season with Tom Cleverley. Everything he says is the opposite of what actually happens. Everything he says is upside down. The home form, the away form's upside down. We need to start getting back to what we're good at.
And one final tangent, James. How can people find your One Team in Devon newsletter?
Thanks to a friend of mine, simply oneteamindevon.com. Nice.
And if people even check the bio of the YouTube videos, you've been in there for months. I don't know how many signups you've had from there. Who else are in there? PAFC Displays. A few others.
Should probably write a newsletter.
Yeah, the Women's Supporters Club as well. The women's team won 5-0 today, and I keep saying we're going to cover them more, and we don't. And apologies, that's on me. But we'll get round to it eventually. The two Jazz has promised to write an article soon, so we'll get that out. So they know what they're talking about, and I don't. So, but yeah, a good 5-0 win against Map Ladies sees us continue our winning streak. From what I keep seeing, we keep winning, so that's good. But it's probably doing less of a service by talking like this, aren't I, than actually praising them up.
You are still going there, which is quite something.
Yeah, I'll keep my mouth shut.
Anyway, the more somebody's got time to put in the comments when was the last time we won 6 out of 7 away games, and still they haven't yet. So yeah, I think there's been quite a few times where we've been 7 or even more unbeaten. Because
we're going again, are we? Go on then. Carry on.
A lot of draws in that. Like I say, 6 wins out of 7 is very rare. But like I said, I don't think anyone's coming up with an answer. So we'll have to maybe either look it up on the wonderful greens on screen when we're off screen, or if not that, maybe see if anybody can do the work for us and reply to us on socials. But that's just a little brain teaser to think about as we go off air.
Yeah, nice. If people's brains haven't been fried by the last hour and 18 minutes and 36 seconds, thanks as always. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Find us on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on all your major podcast platforms. Yeah, cheers, guys.
Yeah.